Jacob Jacob O'Neill is a men's coach who episode 1 of The Man's Mind with Jacob O'Neill. Jacob Jacob O'Neill is a men's coach who comes from a heart-centered approach to help men to embody more of their authentic selves, to honor themselves and serve themselves and their queens and family and the collective. Hello, Jacob.
Yo, what's up?
Thanks so much for joining us.
Stoked to be here.
Right. Jacob, I would absolutely love, and I know the people and the viewers watching, all the men and women that are trying to get a bit more insight into the divine masculine energy, would like to know how it is that you what was your journey into doing this work? What was your own personal story and adversities that have sort of led you to coming and doing some more of the inner work?
Yeah, I love this. I love telling my story. I love the sound of my own voice, but yeah, I love a good story. And I grew up, and I'll tell a fast track version, but I'll really hit some important points that I think occurred that I weren't conscious of, that really shaped part of my process leading up to where I am today. So I grew up in a small town of only 2,000 people, and I come from a country town in New South Wales, and it was there that I really solidified a lot of small town country values that I still carry with me today. And they're still deeply rooted in who I am as a being. Through that, though, I also rebelled against that. I wanted the big city lights. I wanted to be near the ocean. I wanted the cool board shorts. I wanted all of the brand name things. I wanted the things. I got very, very concerned with material possessions and concerned with how I looked. And this showed up. I smashed my mouth when I was 10 years old and knocked all my teeth out and cut my lip off, and ended up having really a lot of insecurity programming from my parents. I got really ashamed of manhood, so I pushed against it. I did not want to be initiated into being an adult, let alone a man. So I hid that all under tight clothes, bright clothes, long blonde hair, lots of emotional rock and roll music. And it was something that I was really proud of, the fact that I went against the grain. But deep down, I craved it. I craved to be taught how to drive. I craved all of the things that my father was attempting to guide me through. But because I thought they were wrong, I pushed them away. And I was wrapped up in this passive aggressive rebelliousness where I never fully stood in my power and claimed who I was, but I was very, very quick to point the finger and tell other people that they were doing it wrong. And as that evolved, I moved away from the small town. I went through university and I looked for a marketing job, and was looking to dive into sales because I was told that I was always a good talker or a good speaker. But as fate would have it, I ended up working at an organic health food store. And this was right after my university and partying days. So I'd just been through the ringer. I'd been just done a degree that I didn't really love. I was partying nonstop, and I got this job working at a health food store. And that was when everything changed. That was my big moment. I learned about the power of like nourishing your body with healthy foods. Even though I was drinking green smoothies every morning and eating a healthy diet, I was still partying 4 times a week, but I had this ability to, I could feel the wheels were turning in this new way. And then all of a sudden, this woman just kept coming in 3 or 4 times a week, and her name was Meg, and she's now my lover of 7 years. But she kept on coming through, and we'd have these chats. And unbeknownst to me, she was deeply in love with me, and she wanted me. And eventually, as time would tell, we got together. But it wasn't until 6 months in that she really called me into my power. She said, I can feel that you're too comfortable. I feel that you're happy where you're at. I really want to expand, grow, and become more. And I really love you, but I don't feel like you want to come on that journey with me. And she said, that's okay if you don't. I just need to know now. And this is one of the most beautiful invitations of the feminine, of the expansive, infinite feminine is to call us into greatness. So this was my first true call into greatness. And it was there that I said, yes, I'm in. That then looked like some deep ceremony down in the hinterland of Byron with one of my beautiful teachers, Gemma, who's a divine space holder. And then that spurred on a trip to Peru, where I worked with shamans and I worked with the masters over there. And then upon returning, I was like, I want a men's group. And I couldn't find a men's group with younger men. So I found a lot of beautiful men's groups for the guys in like late 40s, early 50s, or guys that had families that were going through certain troubling experiences. But there wasn't any for these I know I have a really bright fire and it burns quite intensely. And I was like, where's the men's groups for these younger men? So I didn't have that. So one of my mantras is if you crave it, create it. So what I did was just made a Facebook event, and that's when the first of my men's group started, maybe 3-4 years ago now.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think the thing that really rings just like really deep in my soul is when your partner actually has used her divine feminine and sort of said, it's okay, I appreciate and love you where you're at, but it's not where I want to be, and I'm choosing to evolve to this point, and sort of said, and gave you that choice, and you actually rose to that occasion, because there's so many, not just men, women that have that opportunity, and there's someone that's like, yeah, let's do this and grow together, and you don't see the other part match that energy. And then ultimately I see so many relationships fail because you're not choosing to grow together. So that's really beautiful that you guys were able to do that. How has that journey together, how has the inner work helped your relationship evolve? Well, like, what are some of the main things that you've seen really shift compared to what you believed a relationship to be in the past?
It's just been an ongoing shedding of codependent behavior, an ongoing shedding of a deeper layers of codependency. And what you spoke to before about like the invitation from the feminine, like it has to be an invitation. It can't be an order. Like for me, I have to be invited into it. I have to have a say in the matter. I have to be able to say yes or no to it. So it's a sovereign choice. What I feel sometimes is that as the feminine can be quite powerful and infinite and beautiful, but it will almost force men into something. And this is where I lost myself in that journey, where I said yes to the journey with my lover. I said, yeah, I want to grow and expand with you. But then I tried to grow and expand in the ways that she was growing and expanding. So initially the inner work was all doing it together. We'd go and sit in ceremony together. We'd go and do the workshops together. We'd tried to build businesses together. We tried to do everything together. So what we did was we created this codependent spiritual piece of, it was a crock of shit eventually. Like that's eventually, it was both of us relying on each other to create this spiritual ego.
Yeah. And still filling each other's cup, rather than this is my role in the relationship, this is your role in the relationship, and this is my purpose, this is your purpose, and when we come together we can create something new. And it's challenging, especially when you initially are not at that level of consciousness, that you meet someone and you're already met in a codependent state and you are filling each other's cup. So the many layers of redefining who you are and authentically going on that journey. With the men's circles that you created, how did they start? Like, what are some of the things that you do with the men in those environments for some of the guys out there that are really interested in maybe connecting? I know there's a lot of fear for a lot of men about being vulnerable and being in a space with other men and women. There's this level of fear around vulnerability. So what does that look like, and how did that sort of evolve?
This is like what changed. Like all of my other things that I did were groundbreaking and revolutionary in my own journey, but like as soon as I stepped into men's work, like that was the major shift. What we're experiencing with the patriarchy is quite often focused on how women have been oppressed. What I learned through men's work is that men are scared of men, and men want to be vulnerable. Men want to open up and share their heart with each other. We want to, but because we're so scared of that, we then run off to wars to actually be able to like feel something. We run off and fight against each other just to be able to access feeling. So for me, what I realized was that men are scared of men, and me especially, I was so scared of men. And it wasn't until I stepped into men's work and I created a safe container and I chose to go first every time, every check-in. With the men's groups, yeah, what I realized was that men are afraid of men based on this patriarchal society that other people have to have power over you, or that power is something that we have over others. It's not something that's generated from within. So for me, what I always say is love goes first, and to go first, you must be willing to take the lead. So for me, it was like, okay, I need to share my heart. So what I would do is create a safe space, call each man into their sovereignty and say, you're here and you're responsible for you. And you have the honor and the responsibility of co-creating this sacred container. You have the honor and the responsibility of holding each man in his rawest, realest form. And the way to do that is by sharing your rawest and realest version of you.
Yeah. And that's
so that was the process. And essentially I just said, let's just drop in and just tell me.
I think when you allow one person though to even drop their walls, and one of the guys to drop their walls and barriers and sort of allow that authenticity and that vulnerability, it has this flow on effect. It's like, oh, it's okay. You know, like there's this level of relief of I can do this too because that person's doing it. And then it's like that similar invitation, and you can then share from that energy. But something I've also noticed is what you were saying, that men are so terrified and scared, and that what I've seen is from this level of competitive behavior that has been created from society from the very beginning of time about I like to call it like the ball size competition, where you've got men that are just competing about who's showing up the most in this masked masculinity, and it's what creates this fear of even going into any of their true essence. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think men will apply structure based on what they know. And what is the most common structure that we're given as young boys? It's sport. And what do we do in sport? We play to win. We play to compete against another. So a lot of us grew up on sport, right? Especially team sport. And what did we hate about the other team? That they existed. I was taught to be bloodthirsty when it came to sport. And then I applied this structure to all of life. That there was an enemy, and that I had to kill them. Yeah, I had to win at all costs. And I have a really beautiful. A lot happened when I was 10 and 11, but I remember playing softball, which wasn't a sport that I played very often. It was just one that we played between schools. And everyone on my team didn't really care about the outcome, nor did they have the same level of skill that I did. Not that I was amazing, but I was pretty handy with anything that included sport and a ball. And I blew up on the field, and I vomited all this hatred at my teammates and stormed off. And what I realized now is that I didn't have the capacity to communicate how I was feeling, nor did I have the container or the structure to channel my competitive energy or this fire that's burning within me. And then that whole loop of me like playing sports, wanting to win, not winning, losing my cool, that circulated through relationships, through workplaces. And for me, that's why men's work is so important, is because there is no opponent. There is no one to compete against. That's the key difference. A lot of people think that you can do this work in sport, that you can do this place in a workplace, that you can do this in your relationship. You cannot. You have to do it amongst other men in a place where there is no competition, where there is no win or lose, where we're not playing in the game of duality that we quite often experience in relationship or in, a hierarchical sense in work. So what I believe is that we all apply a sport structure to life, and it's not necessarily serving us as men.
No, definitely, especially when you talk about, I love how men do put things in containers. And when you talk about that, and it's like, all right, well, I'm going to put this situation in a container because I can't deal with it right now. So it gets packed away and put in a cupboard or an attic or a dungeon somewhere, and to deal with it later. And then, as you were saying, sometimes you don't have the tools. So when the emotional overwhelm happens, losing a game, you then explode in the anger, because there's the anger's the emotion that is the one that's easier to express and the one that rather than looking at what's underneath and what you've packed away as to why you're actually feeling that. What are some of what you talk about being heart-centered? So what does being a heart-centered man mean to you? Because I know there's a lot of men out there that may have not actually heard that terminology before.
Are we allowed to swear on this, or are we keeping it PG?
You can say whatever you want.
Okay, so I believe that men operate on a pendulum state of being, which is where they swing between their head and their cock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they're either in their head or they're being led by their carnal desires.
Mm-hmm.
So the heart is where we actually bring everything together, and we live from the body. We live from wisdom. We live from conscious being. Mm-hmm. So the heart is our gift as masculine beings. It's where consciousness rests. So by being a heart-centered man, what we're doing is we're coming home to who we truly are, and then we're offering the gifts that emerge from knowing who we are. That's essentially it. And it's about knowing how to use our cock and our head as tools, rather than as as things that lead us or lead us astray.
Yeah, so, rather than being the driver of the experience, it's like recognizing the difference between and where that drive's coming from, and that unconscious, unbalanced energy as to why you're driving from that energy, rather than coming from here and then incorporating it. Because there's nothing wrong with being a savage, a heart-centered savage.
Exactly. If it's coming from the heart and it comes out the cock, like, that's beautiful. That's a heart-centered penetrative energy. That's how you fuck a woman to God. That's how you offer her something that she cannot offer herself. That's how you lead her to where she is unable to lead herself. Like, there is a dance here of sexual polarity that occurs within relationship that is super fucking fun.
Yeah, totally.
A lot of people try to spiritually bypass this by saying sexual polarity is unnecessary. And I've experienced sacred union with the medicines, with the masters, and being initiated in both men's circles and by initiatresses, by women. Yeah. And what I know to be true is that I am a living soul. I am eternal. But I'm also Jacob O'Neill, who loves to fucking drink beer, eat fucking burgers, make love to my woman, run marathons, and love people. Like, I still have the capacity to experience this separateness on earth whilst being in my heart.
And I think that you make a really good point around the spiritual bypassing around sexuality as well, and the humanness of the whole experience. Like, I hear so many people say that, about ego death, and around how you should just be able to live in peace with no needs and no desires. And to me, the ego is the part of the mind that causes separation, right? So yes, that is, if you're ran by that, then you're going to feel really separate from yourself and everyone else. But if we didn't have separation, then how would we be able to know the difference between myself and you, your woman and you, to have that actually have that experience, to actually define what's feminine and masculine energy, to define sadness and joy. You need the level of separation to fully embody this beautiful gift that we have here as humans on this planet. So I really appreciate you sharing that from your point of view, because I totally resonate with it. And I think a lot of people will really value that little bit of information.
Like the piece that I bring it back to is like, come back to your breath. What does your breath do? It inhales and it exhales. Without an inhale, you cannot have an exhale. Like there is your defining point of duality. And if you want to fully transcend duality and go back to the cosmos and hang out and do your thing up there 100%, but you're going to have to stop breathing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the only way. And you there's no other way of doing it. You have to fully embrace the separateness in all of its wholeness.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what I'd love to know what some of the things are that you personally do to keep yourself in your heart, aligned, connected, centered, some of your practices that keep you from maybe sitting in too much ego, or how you manage yourself daily, so that some of the guys watching will have a bit of an idea of what your embodiment practices are, what your day-to-day life look like.
So I like to, like, there's 4 pillars to connection that I've been working with more recently, and they are storytelling, singing, dancing, and solitude. So I break those, I sort of move those around a little bit, but for me, like time alone is so important because it gives me a chance to reflect. So solitude for me is like, if I look at, okay, I need some solitude, what do I need to do? Do I need to go and sit in nature and just be with nature? That'll happen maybe once or twice a week. I'll go and sit in nature for an hour or two, and just with no notebook, no cup of cacao, nothing, and just return to my natural state.
Yeah.
Other times it's literally just journal. Like I'll journal. I'll set the timer for 5 minutes, and I'll be like, write whatever it is that comes through you. And that's another thing that I like to do alone. For me, I don't meditate. Like I'm not a big meditator. I love to run. Like running is my meditation. Like I love to run. And that's sort of like I often wear like loose fitting button up shirts when I run, and I like to run as if it's almost a form of dance for me, running.
Actually, on that, you mentioned the 4 pillars, and there's a couple of things there that I identified that you've got more 2 feminine sort of energies and 2 masculine. Sitting in solitude, and how much that the man cave is actually like a real thing for the masculine energy, and how you really need to honor that part of yourself to sit, reflect, and process your own emotions and situations in life to get that clarity, and reconnect to yourself. And then the other one was the journaling. Then the balance that you've got with the dancing and the singing and the free flow of movement, that's beautiful. So how did you sort of start to discover that between yourself, that you needed to have a balance? I mean, in relationships, yes, we need that real polarity, but within ourselves, we need to have this level of balance. So how did you discover for your own alignment that you needed both those energies?
I came to the realization that if I didn't nurture and cultivate my own feminine, I then had a reliance on my lover to nourish me. So therefore, I was giving my power away by expecting her feminine to always be my access to that nourishment. So through men's work, a lot of people think that we primal scream, we wrestle, we cold plunge. A lot of that, yes, we do, and I fucking love it. But there is also a deeply, deeply sacred part of men's work where we hold our own feminine, and we love and nourish our feminine side. And you can call this whatever you want, but to me, it is the feminine. It's a beautiful representation of my softness, my expressiveness, my chaos, my fire. And when I started to honor that, like it felt like I was resting, not only for myself, but for the generations of men that I come from. All of the men that have worked their asses off, that never took a break. All of the men that put themselves last. All of the men that never prioritized the things that really lit them up. And I was resting and nourishing myself on behalf of my lineage. It was probably the hugest. I always say everything's the biggest process because I'm constantly moving through things, but it was a massive process to acknowledge that maybe for the first time in my lineage, I'm one of the first men to actually stop and love myself.
Yeah.
Without a woman.
Yeah. And it's really beautiful and poetic the way you say it, that you will always be relying on your partner to fulfill your needs if you don't start to actually really cultivate them within. And so one of the topics that I hear come up a lot with my clients is, around she's not filling my sexual needs and desires. And I'm like, well, do you even know what your own sexual needs and desires are? Do you know how to be intimate with yourself? Like, do you know how to physically come into some level of softness and sensuality and be intimate and touch your body in some self-pleasure? Or when you go and enjoy it, is it just a wham bam, like just to get off? And it just like blows guys' minds to go, well, whoa, I've never really thought about doing that. And it's quite uncomfortable.
Definitely. And like that's been a big part of my journey probably the last 6 months, is my own sexuality and understanding it as a spectrum and broadening my definition of what sex really is. A lot of men, and myself included, I believe sex was penetration, ejaculation, done. Oh, how wrong I was. How wrong. But I was never taught, right? I was never taught anything other, because my parents weren't incredibly comfortable with their sexuality. Therefore, they didn't have the capacity to teach me. I remember 2 lessons in PE when I was in year 7, which I was 11, and I was a late bloomer, so I wasn't ready for that kind of conversation yet.
Yeah.
What I realized though was that I hadn't really explored sexuality on my own. So how was I meant to explore it with another? And this is exactly what you said. We're taught, like for me, I used to go and sit on the toilet when I was doing a shit and have a wank at the same time. Like, is that not the most non-sacred way to honor my sexual energy? And I'm thinking, wow, like I'm doing it in a closed container. I'm hiding away from people. And I just did a little course with one of my brothers, and it was all around self-pleasure. And I had to actually like talk to my woman and say, hey, I'm actually just going to self-pleasure right now. And I had to claim it. And just saying that, I felt like I was going to throw up. I got all hot and my palms. It was like, oh, like claiming our desires as men is the main part of the work. For me, it was huge. I couldn't believe it. And then also identifying the difference between my true desires and unmet needs from childhood. And knowing when I was looking to have an insecurity or a need met based off a childhood wound, versus actually I have a desire to connect with you, to be intimate with you, and to explore sex for the full range that it is.
Yeah, to share energy and to just have that experience together, rather than those unconscious deep woundings. On those childhood wounds, what are some of the more common ones that you see with your clients? What seems to be one of the repetitive things that comes up for men that maybe is something that you constantly have to sort of coach people through, and how do you help them through that?
One of the two corresponding ones are men desperately trying to not be like their father. And in doing that, they've been trained to almost be their mother's lover. So they've got this emotional incest with their mother, which then limits their capacity to connect with their woman. This, to me, is one of the main issues facing the modern man in his 20s, 30s, 40s. And it's all based on this guilt hangover where we feel responsible for all of the pain that women experienced.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to make up for it. So we're trying to be overly nice. We're going to try to overcompensate. So in doing that, we're like, I don't want to be like my dad. I've got to love and then we've almost got this emotional weight coming from our mother. And I've had that heavily. And then it's like, and I'm going to try and love my woman, but then I expect my woman to give me what my mother wants because that's what I understand love to be. And this is the true pandemic for men, I believe, is this tearing between the love from the mother and the love from the actual woman they're trying to be intimate with, which is beneath the father wound for me. Like I know that, like, I've reconciled a lot of my stuff with my dad, and I know that there's parts of him that are fucking awesome, and they move through me, and I get to embody and carry on that lineage. There's parts that I don't want to, and that's okay as well. And then same with my mother. And this all comes back to, if I'm to bring it all into one, it's like we haven't been initiated into manhood, so we're still operating as little boys in adults' bodies. So it's just a lack of initiation.
And it's actually really interesting that you bring that up as one of the main woundings that you see, because I just did a piece on what I would consider the mother wound, where the masculine energy is the substitute for the mother, and there's a lot of guilt and shame attached, and they're over giving themselves to, but then also like giving themselves up to gain this worthiness of love at the same time. And there can be a pattern of behavior in the women that they attract, that these women are quite passive aggressive, or they can be a little bit more manipulative in these like really emotional, guilt tripping, shaming ways, and how it continues to play out until there's that recognition of exactly that childhood wound that you've just talked about. When did you start to really understand and work through the inner? See, my personal opinion is that all of our suffering that we sort of experience, and any sort of contractions, insecurities, when you really look back to them, they all stem from childhood, and then it's just been something that's perpetuated that cycle, and it just continues to loop until we go through enough pain that we have to look at it and start to actually heal it and layer it back. What was it that really made you come to a space of recognizing that it was, because so many people, men, don't want to see their parents in a bad light. and this is one of the biggest challenges I can see, is some people just flat out deny. They're like, I had a great childhood, I got X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, I understand you can rationalize it that way, but when you really look at the inner child, and the inner child doesn't have that logical mind that can actually look at the situation that way and see that they were doing the best they could, or they were working, or they had an addiction, or they had their own traumas. When you step back and you're like, well, that inner child, what was that inner child actually feeling? And it can be really confronting for people to take their parents off that pedestal. What's your experience and opinion on some of that?
So I agree with all of that, and I'd add that once you acknowledge the full spectrum of your parents, when you actually acknowledge the those parts that aren't as favorable, there's no going back. Once you've opened that, and this is, to me, I don't know whether people are as worried about actually saying or acknowledging the things as they are about actually feeling the emotions that come up afterward. For me, that was the big experience. I was like, I don't want to have to look at those wounds, because not because I don't want to acknowledge them, but it's because of the pain that's there that will have to be felt. And I moved through a deep wounding with my mother earlier this year after it all came to the surface, and it was probably the most painful experience of my life. Incredibly painful, of like acknowledging that I had to let her go and she had to let me go. Our relationship as we knew it had to die for this new relationship to emerge, where I could stand up and be a man, and I could claim my woman, and I could continue the lineage that is, here for me to live. I had to like turn the page, so to speak. We'd been reading the same chapter over and over and over again, which is classic inner child looping, right? It's just the subconscious program, just autopilot.
Yeah, exactly. And that level of, be willing to destroy something and for it to die. I think that's really powerful, because I often like to talk about, letting something die so it can be recreated, created in a new energy, in a new light. And what you were saying around fully seeing your parents, you can't unsee awareness, and you can't unsee that. So you have once you see it, you either have a choice to continue the same pattern of behavior, which is then basically, well, I'm choosing self-abuse, or to work on it and heal. And what I sort of see when you acknowledge it, and when you truly go, okay, I'm going to see past what the illusion of my mind's created, and see people in truth, see myself in truth, see my childhood in truth, see my real wounds in truth, then you actually can have a lot of love and compassion for the people that you maybe held some anger, resentment, and uncomfortable feelings around. Do you feel like that when you really started to heal that and see your parents in truth, you were able to have that love and compassion for where they're at in their own evolution?
Oh, definitely. Like once the truth emerges, the only thing that is left is to feel is love. Yeah. And love is beneath all things. And this is the beauty. Like for me, these processes, there's an experience, there's an emotion, and then there's energy. There's an experience that happened, there's an emotion that was suppressed, and there's energy stored in the body. We need to address all three. We could say, oh, my mum's a dick, or my dad's a dick for doing this when I was 10, and then just replay that over and over again. But then it's like, oh, my dad's a dick, he never came to my soccer games when I was 10. Oh, really? And deep down, it's not my dad's a dick. It's like there's little Jacob in there. It's like, fuck, man, I would have loved for my dad to see me score that goal. I would have loved dad to come and watch me. There's a deep, like, yearning for love. And like, I feel that in my body right now. I feel a sadness. I feel a grief that my dad didn't see me when I hit my first 6 at cricket. There's all these moments that he missed that I've got to allow the grief to move through me. I would have loved for him to be there. And then I get angry and I'm like, fuck this guy. And then I'm like coming back, and then it's this feeling process. And then I have to like actually have my energetic release, whether that's cry, scream, shake, just hold myself through it. And on the other side of that is compassion. Hey, my dad was working weekends. Hey, I had, there's a reason that I had a new cricket bat. There's a reason that I always had awesome footy boots. There's a reason. There was a sacrifice there that he made, even though he wasn't aware that I would have fucking worn no shoes if he was there at the game. I would have played naked if he was there. I didn't give a fuck, but he was doing what he knew. And I can reconcile all of that through my feeling body, through acknowledging those 3 aspects, and then stepping back in and saying, hey, I can still create. My father's still here on earth. I can still create connections with him. I can still create connections with other father figures and mentors and role models who can give me that experience, even as a 31-year-old man. So through that feeling of that, and similarly with the things with my mum, I'm able to let go, come back to this moment, and to see what's possible, which is just so fucking nice, right? It just takes so much pressure off me and what I carry around.
Yeah, exactly. And as just that in itself, there was a few things that have really been in my own awareness and field a lot with people, and talking about, you can't just address the beliefs and you can't just do the energy work. You have to understand that an experience creates a thought, the thought creates an emotion, and the emotion then creates some sort of energetic frequency or vibration. And you have to deal with all three. Otherwise, you're going to still end up with some, it's like, yeah, sure, go see a healer, but go see a healer, you're going to get a cleanup, and then all of a sudden you're going to be weighed down with all the same shit again because you didn't actually deal with the thing that was causing that in the first place. But then you have a lot of, I see, probably a lot of the masculine energy, just because of the way it's sort of been conditioned through society, is they'll go with the logical side of like changing the mind and the belief, but they're still so disconnected from their body and their emotion, and they try to rationalize it. So the men, the whole intertwined dealing with all of that is what I would call actual trauma release, and working through it on each layer. And then once you shift all of that, then you can put in the new belief.
For sure. And I think for me, like everything sits upon a desire to be loved. And in between those two things, there's this grief. There's grief. At the bottom of everything, there seems to be grief. From my experience, the deeper I'll dig, and all of a sudden, boom, okay, there's the grief. Beyond the grief, there's this deep love. And beyond love, there's this beautiful compassion. And this is like for me, this is living in the body. And what I know is that a lot of men have been taught to live above the shoulders. We've been celebrated for our minds and our dicks, and that's it. And it's so hard to actually come back into your body and feel safe in your body as a man. And until we create spaces and we create a culture that celebrates initiations, rites of passages, and spaces where men can feel the feelings that they haven't felt and process whatever it is that is holding them back from a truly great existence, we're going to recreate all of this suffering. We're going to recreate all of this unharmonious distribution of resources, and we'll continue to to neglect our mother, the mother that that we are all children to, which is Mother Earth. And essentially, this is my learning, and my as I've been through my process with my mum, now I know that I am here to return to her as a man and nurture her and protect her and love her as she moves into her next level of eldership. And in seeing that, I can see how on a global scale or collective scale, as more men step into true manhood through rite of passage and initiation, naturally we're going to be like, fuck, let's look after this world. This world is amazing. It's sacred. It's magical. And in doing that, women are just going to be loved, cared for, and protected in a way that is void of expectation and comes from a place of unconditional love.
Yeah, I 110% agree with everything that you're saying. And the more that you reconnect to that part of yourself, that's all there is. And I'm really, really enjoying your point of view. For the guys watching this, what's one piece of advice that you could sort of give them, either coming into their own personal journey, their healing journey, awakening? What would that be?
Like, what for me, like the mantra that I use is like, what will you tell my son? And that's big for me, because fatherhood is such a sacred journey. It's like, what do you want me to tell your son about you when he asks me? Like, that's such an important, like, we are ancestors in the making, and we need to start acting like it. We are elders in the making. We need to start acting like it. But for me, the biggest piece is that for men, like, trust your capacity to face the challenge. Trust your capacity, because you are so much more than you think.
Yeah,
that has always been my kind, like, and faith will always ask you to have faith will always invite you to go a little further than you're willing.
Yeah, and having that level of trust along with it, and definitely pushes you into that uncomfortable space, doesn't it?
And it's just such a, like, one of the things that my teacher Gemma has always taught me is, like, listen to yourself first and last, which is like, okay, I'm listening to myself. I've got this desire to step into a men's group. Okay, step into the men's group, receive all that's in there, and then come out of it and say, okay, I want to take this, and this with me. So do not, that is the practice for me. Oh, there's a desire to step into this experience, step into it. All right. There was only one thing out of 100 there for me, but there was one thing. So I'll take that and I'll move on. Or there might be 101 things for me in that space, and I'll take all of them.
Yeah.
So, like, for me, the biggest thing is that men have abandoned themselves. They've abandoned their body wisdom. And, like, you cannot tell me anything that I don't already know. Yeah. And I say that, and I encourage men to have the same level of audacity, like, and do something that your mind doesn't believe your body can do. Like, that is the practice as men. If we don't seek out the challenge will seek us out. And quite often it comes later in life in the form of our woman having an affair, our woman leaving us, our kids hating us, a heart attack, diabetes, getting made redundant. The initiation will come to you. Yeah.
And it does. and it's exactly that. It's like, if you don't choose to start to listen to your own inner guidance, or your own, I always say, no one can tell you what you know. And it's the same thing as what your mentor has told you. It's like, you can go and experience everything and read different spiritual books, or help shadow work, or whatever it is that you're learning about. And for the masculine energy, and I think it ties into that wound that we were talking about earlier, is around when there's so much guilt and shame, you stop trusting yourself, right? So you actually disconnect from the body. And that level of trust comes as you start to actually feel into your body, because your body tells you when something resonates to you. Your body will tell you when something feels good, or a practice is for you and is aligned with your authentic being. And yeah, I definitely feel that on so many levels. And stepping into that trust is not something that men have any idea how to do. And it's probably one of the first things that I like to get people to start to feel their body, because their body will tell them, the emotion is, all right, well, what is my body here telling me?
Definitely. And, like, the key piece, like, and I've got quite a nurturing energy when I work with men. It's like, brother, you are not inherently bad. You are not born wrong. Like, it's okay for you to want what you want. It's okay for you to have desires. It's okay for you to question and be curious about things you do not yet understand. And that is the most beautiful permission slip, because what we're looking for is an arena to explore and develop our sense of self. And there can be nothing more nourishing to a man than to be given space to explore his own awareness, his own identity, his own becoming. And for me, like, as I anchor my vision and I trust the process and I uphold the values that I know to be true in this moment, like, the meaningful work that I'm here to do presents itself, and I respond to it accordingly. But it isn't because I've just magically figured it out. It's because I've entered these spaces where I've had the opportunity to explore myself.
Yeah, exactly. It's not magic. You've actually gone into that space of going against the grain and going within, and that takes huge amounts of courage. To me, that's truly exactly what being an authentic embodied man is. That's a true man in my eyes.
Yeah.
So I'd love to know, for some of the people watching, what are some of the upcoming events that you have? What is some of the work that you have that they could get involved in, available at the moment?
Awesome. Yes. So we run, me along with a few other men, we run a weekly men's group on the Gold Coast. Every Saturday morning at 7 a.m. So we've got a few different facilitators who operate there. I know Jack's coming on week 8 with you, Jack Brazier. He's a dear brother of mine, and he and I have worked through many different processes together. So we run that, and we do that every Saturday. That's a free event for men to come along and be a part of. We're also got a brother who's starting that in Brisbane, another brother starting one in Ipswich. So we're really looking to expand. And if there's anyone that wants to hold one or looking to step up and do it in another city, let me know and I can guide you on that. I've also got a amazing men's retreat coming up, and this is like my true heart work. It's called Finding Your Edge, and this is launching on Monday, and it's going to be on the 3rd till the 6th of September. So it's in 6 weeks' time. It's a 4-day retreat that's located in northern New South Wales, and it's a rite of passage for men who have never been given the space to process and feel all the things that are holding them back from greatness. So it's a 4-day full immersion amongst 20 other men. It's a really beautiful way to be in a space doing the work alongside brothers.
Beautiful. And
sorry.
No, you go.
And then I offer group mentoring programs, and I also offer one-on-one coaching for men, especially men who have a relationship where they feel that their woman is outgrowing them, and they are wanting to expand and grow and feel supported, so they don't actually have their whole life turned upside down. So if there are any men that are reaching that point that feel like their woman is outgrowing them, then that's where I step in and I support you to cultivate your sovereignty and then re-engage from that place.
Beautiful, because I feel like that's definitely an area of niche for, there's not much. Men are seeing this and they're identifying it in their relationship, but they have no idea where to go, what to do, how to actually move through forward to even match. Like you might want to here want to match your woman, but how do I do that? And I see the mainstream system fail men all of the time. So get turned away, don't get the help they need, don't get the tools. And it's beautiful when somebody like yourself has this personal one-on-one coaching where they can go into this vulnerability and really rise up and come into themselves. So
that's awesome. It. And like the key there is like, and I feel this too, and you'd see this, there's these men with these huge hearts and they haven't been taught how to use them. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly. All right. So I think we've really covered your personal purpose in this chat. But what is your long-term goal, I guess, for creating for yourself and for the collective?
It's to reinstate like sacred masculine culture. Like it's to reinstate a man's place amongst his community. For me, that is my long-term goal, is to create this place and this role for men amongst others that he can fulfill. So for me, that's recreating tribes, so to speak, and doing that with modern technology. I refer to myself and other people who are in this work or are embodying this work, actually bringing it into their body and sharing from their heart. Like we're bridging the worlds. We're bridging the spiritual and the physical, and we're teaching people how to bring them into harmony through being in the body. And that is so important. I think men have lost their spiritual connection, and once they reinstate that connection, they can then offer something that the world truly needs.
100%. And I completely agree. That's where every individual man, when they're feeling that lack of fulfillment, it comes to reconnecting to themselves and then finding their individual purpose, and basically penetrating that out to the world. Beautiful. So
Definitely.
Firstly, where can people find you? How can people contact you if they want to book a session, come to your retreats?
Yep. So you just want to hit me up on Jacob_Man's Movement on Instagram, or hit me at Jacob O'Neill on Facebook. And if you want to jump to my website, it's jacobatO'Neill.com. But I'll drop that down in the comments below on the Facebook Live.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time, Jacob. I really appreciate it. I've had an amazing chat. It definitely brought some new perspectives for me, from a female's viewpoint, talking to somebody like yourself that's really done the work. And I'm really, really grateful for you showing up.
Amazing. I'll drop a link. I've got a PDF with a whole heap of resources that I use, books and podcasts and different things. So I'll drop that down in the comments below, just to give guys access to some great places to start. And then if they're interested in connecting, then I'm here ready to serve. So super, super grateful for this time and space, sister. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you.
All
right.
Cool. Big love.